So welcome everybody to my new 2024 quarterly Brunch and Learns. So most of you knew that in previous years, actually, right after COVID, I started my monthly Zoom calls. And this year, I have revamped them and we're going quarterly. So today is all about boundaries to save your space and your sanity. And I am Jean Marie Herron. I am hopefully your professional organizer and the owner operator of Posse. So Posse is an acronym for Professional Organizing Solutions Serving Everyone. And this year, I like to say, especially for those who want to sell or dwell well. So really specializing in residential organizing for those who want to declutter and sell their home, or those who've been in their home, want to love it, and they want to age in place and dwell well. So welcome. Okay, few things about housekeeping. So we are being recorded. You all got that notice. There's going to be many people who aren't here, but they're going to get the link to the recording. And you're going to get it as well, because I always do a follow-up email. And if you'd like to share it, please feel free. Deborah, my assistant, is on the call, and she will be running the chat box. So if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat box. But I'm going to go through this presentation relatively quickly, because then I do want to open it up to Q&A, because I want to hear about your boundaries or questions for how to set up boundaries relative to physical space and or time management. So we're going to go into Q&A, and then I posted the next 3 dates for the rest of the year. And at the end, I'll have Deborah put them in the chat box as well. So we're going to get started. Okay, so, for those of you who've known me for a while, you know that a lot of times I come up with mottos and maxims in my business because it helps us remember little tricks of the trade, if you will. And I love to say that when somebody gets organized, we can stop fretting. And I kind of made it, I know I did. I made an acronym for FRETS, which is that what it means is that both our organizing and our time management skills, they touch 5 really important arenas of our life, which would be our finances, our relationships, our emotions, our time, and our space. And just using this picture as an example. So you see this picture and you think, okay, this is probably, somebody's desk down in the basement, or maybe pretend it's your desk down in the basement or anywhere in the house. So when I say our organization and our time management skills touch our finances, what could be happening here is maybe we end up paying to go out and buy more art brushes because we can't find our craft supplies. Or maybe somebody really wants to set this desk area up as a bill paying station, but they can't find their bills, so they miss their bills. So that's just a couple of examples of how our skills touch our finances, but it can also touch our relationships. So maybe there's 2 people living in this home, and the aesthetics of this desk really bother one of the partners, okay? Which rolls into our emotions. So maybe when somebody passes this desk on the way to do their wash, because maybe the washer and the dryer are also in the basement, they get frustrated or stressed or angry, or they feel a little, bad juju because of the way it looks. So the way we have our skill set also touches our emotions. And then it touches our time, because in order to, let's say this desk, the appearance of this desk bothers you, it's not going to become organized or neat and tidy unless we spend the time and we dedicate, whether it's 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it takes to get the desk organized on our calendar. And this desk is going to remain looking the way it does if we don't make decisions. So we need to set aside time in order to make decisions, in order to get the organizational ball rolling. And then, of course, we have our space. So everything we do relative to our executive brain function also touches our space. So in this scenario, maybe somebody doesn't want the desk there at all, or maybe they want it on another wall because that would be more aesthetically pleasing or even more productive. So the bottom line is our skills touch our FRETS, which is our finances, our relationships, our emotions, our time, and our space. So I'm going to break each one down, give you some examples, and then at the end, we're going to share. Okay, so here's an example of how you can set up a boundary relative to your finances. Come up with some sort of I'll call it affirmation, a boundary, a rule, whatever it is that's going to help you feel better about yourself relative to your finances. So maybe it's, I will balance my accounts and review my credit card statements monthly. So maybe that's something you're already doing, or for somebody, it's something they're not doing. So that might be a great boundary relative to finances. R is for relationships. So I will honor my partner's request to not leave dirty dishes in the sink. You know, it's so funny. Everybody always says, you know, Jean Marie, I'm not the problem. You know, my son is, my daughter is, my husband is, my mother is. So all these scenarios have to be talked about. And really, you know, when you're living with other people, you have to talk about your relationship relative to being organized and getting organized. So, you know, somebody might not have a issue at all with leaving dirty dishes in the sink, and somebody else who lives in the same house does. So, you know, honoring your partner's request not to leave dirty dishes in the sink might be really, really helpful for the relationship. So that could be a boundary. Then we have E for emotions. So I will hold a family meeting once a week to discuss what went well and what can be improved with chores. And this doesn't have to be for just a family, you know, it could be for any person living with somebody else, you know, or having people over, even on a Thanksgiving dinner. But this idea of having a time when you can talk to the other person, when you have a scheduled time about what went well and what didn't. This is also really helpful when you're in the beginning of, you know, a relationship or moving into a new house, or somebody goes off to college and is dealing with roommates. Just talking about the emotions that go on in your space, because there might be shared space and there could be private space. Private space, you can do whatever you want. But in many households, there's going to be shared spaces. And, you know, the way one person likes the living room is very different than the way another person might feel comfortable or uncomfortable in the living room. So that is emotions. T is for time. So what kind of boundaries or rules would you like to maybe put in your life relative to time boundary? So this was the example I was using for the slideshow. I will allow myself 90 minutes of eye candy, any kind of media, each night. For somebody, that might be way more than enough. Like, oh my gosh, an hour and a half a night, you know, times 7 days a week, I'm going to spend that much time on media. And for somebody else, like my 22-year-old son, would probably have a heart attack if he only spent 90 minutes on media each night. So this is very individualized and personal, as you can tell. So T is for time. And then S is for space. So think about what might be bothering you in your space. So let's talk about clothes for this example. I will only keep the amount of clothes that can fit on the poles in my closet and my one dresser, and the floor will not be an option. So you can, you know, say whatever you want to say about your clothes. And again, you might be sharing space with somebody else, but think about your boundary. You know, maybe the boundary is actually, you know what? I'm going to put away my clothes after I launder them each week. And that's a boundary, just getting them out of the basement or the washer dryer area and getting them into their homes, their dedicated homes, and maybe not, you know, getting dressed out of a laundry basket. But for many people, getting dressed out of a laundry basket is actually fine. So again, you want to think about what works for you. Somebody else might say, like, I'll use a curio cabinet as an example. Maybe somebody that's got a lot of figurines. So their boundary might be X amount of figurines. It might be the placeholder for the figurines, like a curio cabinet, or maybe it's a dollar amount. Maybe somebody has an affection for Star Wars figurines, and maybe their boundary is going to be $100 a month, you know? So again, it's very individual and you have to come up with what's right for you. So to review, we talked about, threats are that our organizational and productivity skills roll up to our finances, our relationships, our emotions, our time, and our space. And when you put these boundaries in place, it can bring you a lot of serenities because you've now protected yourself. And in many cases today, in the world that we live in, there is so much information and knowledge coming at us all the time that we have to kind of limit things, or it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed in all these areas of our life. So that's my little spiel on frets and how it affects you. I'm going to open it up to Q&A in just a second, but I wanted to let everybody know that in April on the 2nd, I am doing a Spring Fling decluttering class at the Oakland Library, and that's where I go over my basic space methodology, which is SSPOE. So for those of you who've worked with me or seen me present, I talk about the sorting, selecting, purging, organizing, and equalizing of any space. So whether it's a whole home, a backpack, one desk, an entire kitchen, etc. So you're welcome to join me there. And then I'm kind of rebranding this year. I have stopped working for Junk Luggers full time. I'm just there on a referral basis. So if you know anybody looking for organizing help or doesn't have my e-zine or doesn't know me on social media, would love your help to encourage people to do so. The other thing is I'm way behind in my Google reviews because I really hadn't been concentrating on Posse in a couple years, but now I am. So if you feel like doing a Google review, that would be fantastic. And so I'm ending with this picture because this is a picture of me from a long time ago, just to reiterate that setting up your boundaries are going to change. Just like every time you go through your seasonal closet and you change, same thing's going to happen with boundaries. So now what I want to do is I want to stop sharing and I want to go back to Brady Bunch. And feel free to put yourself on camera if you like. So I gave you all an example for each one of the frets and a boundary to put in place for your finances, your relationships, your emotion, your time, and your space. I would love it if we would all help share something that came into your head while you were watching this presentation, that you wouldn't be scared to talk about. So please feel free to unmute, say hello, and if you don't want to talk specifically about setting up boundaries and you have another type of organizing question, please feel free to ask now, because this is your time.
I'll share, Jean Marie. It actually happened this last weekend. My husband has a man cave in our basement, and it's his place. I rarely go down there. And I went down this weekend because I was collecting trash to take out, doing my normal weekly cleaning. I don't vacuum, I don't dust in there, nothing. And I went in there and I just almost not panicked, but I felt the stress level because even though he gets dressed in there in the morning, he keeps all of his work clothes down there, which is nice because it gives me more of our master room closet. And his hangers, his shirts and his pants, and he's organized and he's got his shoes. But then you look over into the top of the cabinets and the desk in his project area, it's like a bomb went off. There's stuff everywhere. I couldn't, I was so stressed I had to turn around and leave. And I didn't want to say anything because it's his space, it's his room, the door closes, nobody sees it but him. But I feel like every other day new packages are coming in and I kind of set them aside and I've gotten over, okay, he has his fun money and we don't criticize each other or judge using our fun money. But I got to the point where I said, how can you enjoy your room or do anything down there? And I was trying to choose my words so carefully. And he's like, yeah, it's like I'm a hoarder now. And he kind of added some humor to it. So it kind of gave me a step in. I said, yeah, even if you just spent like 1 hour a weekend while, before where you're outside all the time for the season changing, maybe you could, organize it and see what you have and everything. And I just had to be so careful with my words because you don't want to sound critical. But I was so stressed. I had to turn around and leave. I can't even look at this, you know.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that happens in many, many, many places. And good for the two of you that he does have that private space. And if you wanted to, you could turn around and close the door. But I loved your idea, the boundary setup, if you will, of dedicating, say, an hour a week or whatever is needed to make, you both feel comfortable in the space. I remember I was working with a family and they had two teenage girls. And I had helped them, to organize the whole house. So everything now had a home, very busy lifestyle. The girls they were in high school, they were in activities, both mom and dad, had professions. But they didn't really, they never found the time to get organized unless I was there. So I think it was Sunday, they had Hebrew school, and then Hebrew school ended. And that gave them 2.5 hours every Sunday that all of a sudden got freed up. So I said, well, why don't you, now that you have that block of time, why don't you use that as the boundary, if you will, or the new rule or the time mapping for organizing and just take it from there? Because even based on the size of their home and their activity schedule, they still could have done a lot every Sunday morning, all four of them, in 2.5 hours. So really get creative when you think about your boundaries and setting them up.
Mhm.
So does anybody else want to share a boundary that they like to use? Or even can we help you create a boundary for any of those arenas, financial, relationships, emotions, time, or space?
I love this concept of frets because it gives me a boundary to look at all these different arenas of life. And I realized, so my sister sent me a blouse and recently, and she said, I know you have so many clothes, you don't want more clothes, but when I see something I know you'll love, I send it. And I realized I have a lot of clothes and some of them I haven't worn in 5 years. And why are they still in my closet? Or the ones I take out and go, oh, I'll wear this tomorrow. And then I put it back. So I wrote a note, time to clean all my closets, including my coat closet, which is, I have a very small place and I have my cleaning stuff. I have a lot of things in there. And it's like Dagmar's thing, you open it and slam the door shut so everything doesn't fall on you. So this is going to be my project for Sunday afternoon. I'm cleaning closets. So thank you.
You're welcome. So think about, so this is a spatial boundary. Think about what you may want to set up, like what you might want to tell yourself. So like in the coat closet. So maybe it is going to be half coats, half cleaning supplies. But what would either the number of coats or the number of hangers be where you felt comfortable? Like what fits visually when you look at it comfortably? Is it 10 coats? Is it 5 coats, 20 coats, 3 coats? Or do you need to move the coats, someplace else? So that could be a boundary. I like to say with clothes, when in doubt, get it out. So if you haven't touched your closets in 5 years, I think it's a great idea to go through your clothes. And by the way, I love your sweater, which I believe says love on it. Yes. Yes, very nice. So you probably have the most adorable clothing, based on what you do for a living. So, yeah. So, and again, what would you want the boundary to be for your dressers, for the pole system in your closet? Because our categories over the years can get really, really large. I think, I don't know if, I think it was my last newsletter or the newsletter coming out. I'm trying to remember. I'm working with a client right now who is really, really struggling with her memorabilia and she's getting ready for a move. And the bottom line is she's not willing to go through the memorabilia now, which is fine. So what I'm doing is neatly packing it. So when she gets into her next home, she can go through it at her leisure. So I have an entire large double closet reserved for her for memorabilia. And I've got boxes and bins stacked top to bottom, left to right, you know. So I guess my question would be, when she gets to the next home, what do you want your boundary to be for memorabilia? You know, is it one closet? Is it a certain number of boxes, a certain number of photos, a certain number of trophies, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So just having that concept to percolate in your head, like what would I want my boundary to be, can really help you dedicate or improve on your space.
So my boundary for those kind of things is if I have to dust it, I don't have it.
I like it.
I don't have a lot of stuff around.
My boundary, I love the 1 in, 1 out rule. I literally had some Kohl's Cash a few weeks ago, got some new socks and panties, and when 1 in, 1 went out. So
yeah, love it. Love
I
it.
love that too.
Yeah.
That's great. And I'm all by myself, so I have no excuse that someone else is crowding my closets.
Sometimes that makes it harder because you know it's just you, and it's like, well, nobody else is going to see it, you know?
Right.
But I always say for people who feel really cluttered, up the ante on the 1 in, 1 out, and go with like 1 in, 2 out, or 1 in, 3 out, you know, whatever you need to do to get down to the level that you're comfortable with. Yeah. So
I love that.
Good. I just moved into a place that's like not even 1,000 square feet. So, you know, I looked around and I went, okay, so count the number of closets, count the number of cabinets. Those are your new boundaries. Like, you've got to fit in this, because I too don't want to be moving stuff around to clean it. And I like that, Carol. Like, if you have to dust it, it's gone.
I'm going to do your 1 in, 3 out. So my sister just sent me a new blouse, and I have to get rid of 3 things. All right.
Oh, that's great.
You can hold me accountable. But we feel so much better after we've created them, right?
Yes. Even the one I shared with the financials, like, you know, I really don't like doing QuickBooks. It's something I don't like doing, but I know how important it is. So my boundary is that, like, for example, if my bank statement comes in on the 1st, I actually have that as a repetitive task in my calendar to reconcile my bank statement. I have it by the 2nd. And my rule is that if I don't do it right away, it has to be done the following weekend, because I'll just keep pushing it. So I had to give myself that boundary. And this month my printer was broken, so I haven't done it yet, and I'm up to the 12th. And I have like this little voice is like, you didn't reconcile yet, you know, because the last thing I want to do is have 2 months worth of reconciliation. But yeah, so I try to set myself up all those boundaries so that I don't have to think about it. Okay, anybody else want to share a boundary? Well, we have 4 minutes left.
So I'm dealing with an overabundance. Am I on mute?
No, you're good, Susan.
Oh, an overabundance of papers, and the paperwork is all on my responsibility. So we just got back from a trip and I am swamped. So it takes me 2 days to recover from going away. That's fine. Going away is good. But I have all the bills to pay and all the papers to go through. And I'm like looking at them and going, I suppose I should eat the frog, as Jean Marie says.
Eating the frog is good. Brian Tracy's wonderful.
Yeah. So that's my, I don't know how to set the boundaries on that. Because most of the mail that comes through is stuff to deal with.
Yeah. So I guess thinking of boundaries that will work for you, or even chunking it down. So depending on how your brain thinks, are you do you have the executive brain function that likes to do it in one fell swoop, or is one fell swoop too much? And, you know, do you want to look at your calendar, and if you could estimate how long it takes you to recover from a trip? Let's just say it's 6 hours. I'm not sure, based on the amount of paperwork that you get. So let's say it's 6 hours coming home from a trip. You know, do you want it to be 1, 2, 3, or however many times a week or over 2 weeks to get it done? Or almost categorizing it, like one might be bills, one might be follow-up, et cetera. That is a lot of paperwork.
It is.
And, might there be things that could make it easier on you in terms of technology and the papers? I'm not sure. We are heading into what I call spring fling season. So shredding opportunities are going to be coming down the pike soon. And everybody starts dealing with their so now is actually the time for a lot of people to deal with their paper, like even more on an annual basis than month to month, because we have these shredding opportunities coming, and it avails us to be able to get a lot of paper out. So I'm not sure what might be able to be digitized, what might be able to be systematized. You just might be in a paper heavy way based
I
on
feel like I'm caught between my old life of paper and my new life of technology, and I'm
Yeah.
not one to do a lot of scanning.
Okay.
So I guess I just have to plug forward.
Right. And if you ever, down the road, most people don't know about this particular industry, but there are some wonderful, wonderful professionals out there called daily money managers. And for people who are really paper heavy or getting to the point where they might either want the help just because they want it or eventually need the help, they're kind of like, in between an accountant and almost a lawyer, and they help people stay on track, do all that paper processing, make sure everything is done on time, and get them ready for tax season. I'm not saying you're there, but it's a wonderful, wonderful professional, especially for seniors as we continue to walk down that road and the paperwork gets harder and harder. So that was just an aside.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, everybody. Well, unless anybody has an imminent comment they want to share, my time timer just went off. So we're at the end of our 30 minutes. Hope to see you all on June 11th. I'm not sure what the topic is yet. And if you don't already get my e-zine, let me know. Be happy to share it with you. And you can call me anytime for any questions, 201-406-9643, but I think you all have it. Okay? So everybody
In
have
chat,
a
I
great
did put
spring.
up the upcoming Brunch and Learn quarterly dates with a link to the page to check periodically for more upcoming events.
Yep. So I just, I redo, or Deborah helps me redo my speaking page every month. So if you ever want to know where I am speaking, you just go to my website and go to the speaking tab. Okay, everybody. Mwah. Happy
Bye.
spring. Remember, if you want to see more videos on my organizing, productivity, and decluttering topics, hit the subscribe button and you'll be alerted when the next one is ready.